Welcome to Rauta, and today we're gonna talk about Cradle of Filth. And that's because last week, a few days ago, there was news surfacing about the band first losing their keyboardist, and very soon after that, their other guitar player, Ashrok, who has been part of the band for past 11 years or so. Their keyboard player Zoe, not so much, not so long time, but still, I guess more or less vital part of the band, left the band prior to Ashrok, her husband, and this of course sparked a lot of speculation, lots of talks and thoughts and all that stuff all over the internet, especially when news outlets such as Metal Injection started making news about it. And then it seems, didn't go through them, I don't really care, a lot of influencers, YouTubers like Rauta here, were doing pretty much the same, parroting the news. And while I'm not obviously criticizing that, I decided to wait on the matter because, as always, there are these things. There's the first wave of news, and in this case, it's very, very different what seems to be following the stuff. Now, obviously, there's always the another side of the story, which I was waiting for, and it seems that even after that, referring here to Danny Field's comments, there's more waves to come. But first, let's get back to the very starting point. So what happened is that Cradle of Filth first lost the keyboard player. This was not happening under nice circumstances. There was a lot of debate about, payment being unfair and the management turning out to be shitty towards these ex-band members, and so on and so on. Then very quickly, Ashrok, the guitar player, was fired from the band. And this sparked even more speculation, like what's going on, how shitty is Danny Field, how shitty is the organizers, the management, and all that stuff within the band. Who is to blame for and what they are blaming them for and all that stuff. Now, a lot of these things went obviously viral when the keyboard player Zoe decided to put it all over there, explaining some of the agreements, what they were offered, they referencing to Zoe, the keyboard player, as well as her husband, Ashrok, the guitar player. Now, a lot of people then decided to take this as the whole truth and nothing but the truth, obviously. I mean, this is pretty much like the basic standard guerrilla tactics, what you do when, for instance, you decide to divorce. Whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, wife, spouse, blah, 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 or even of your ex, place of employment, you might want to do this because whoever moves first has the initiative, has the so-called, the momentum, you're basically on higher ground in the sense that if you do the first attack, you're like, hey, shots fired, and you are able to play some time with that and all that stuff. So it's like an opening move in a chess game or whatever. And obviously this didn't start nicely, otherwise there wouldn't be any news, right? So when these shots are fired by blaming all the management and the whole crew and basically the rest of the band, excluding the husband, it seems like these keyboard player and kiddos, they were just victims of abuse and whatnot, low payment and shitty agreement and all that stuff. Now, obviously, whoever have ever either played in a band or worked in a, some kind of a job knows that these stories are not really always that black and white, like evil corporation and the poor people working. I'm a worker myself, so I should know both ways because I also do run Rauta here, which is obviously not my place of employment. I'm just saying there are always two sides of the table, and rarely, very, very rarely, if ever, anybody tells both sides of the story. It's always the poor employer who is, doing this or that or the other way around, So my point here is, when Zoe the keyboard player was putting out some of these facts, but also mixed with opinions, everybody with a set of brain or whatever, piece of brain even, could figure out this is not, end all be all kind of a situation. Now, Ashrok was more maybe a neutral in the sense that he wasn't, leaving the band as quickly as his wife, but was more like terminated. You could pretty much figure it from that part alone. If you have to choose between your marriage, assuming at least some degree happy one, and between your place of employment, the job, obviously you will go with your spouse. But probably he wanted to have it both. I mean, why not? He had been playing in the band for more than 10 years. So obviously, why couldn't he figure out and, how to, deal with the problems and go with the rest of the tour, which the band is now doing, and still keep the marriage intact? But as you can figure out, there probably was some things called bias. And probably as a husband of a just recently departed keyboard player, you probably weren't in exactly the soft spot. So basically in a limbo between the rock and the hard place. So you probably fucked either way. If you had been able to stay in the band, you would be getting shit from your, spouse because she's not part of the band anymore. And if you left the band, well, you can figure it out the other way around. So obviously, now it seems like there were suddenly these two ex-members against the band. And that should be the whole truth, obviously. The band, the management, faceless, evil corporation, all that stuff. Except, obviously, it's not like that. Now, I'm not taking sides here because, obviously, it's never that simple. One person says this, another one says that. So it's basically, person against person, a group of people against group of people, and everybody has their own agenda, as neutral as they may appear. Now, when I said this couple had the good initiative, starting the first shots fired and all, gives them a little bit on edge how to start the whole thing and the narrative, and, people have already made up their opinions. That's the good thing when you make the opening move. However, when there's this other party who is able to respond to this whole thing, they have more time to think about it through, getting a little bit more level-headed and explain their version of the story in a more, say, moderate fashion. And by this I mean they can wait it out. So, emotions have probably cooled down a little bit, and they have the time to think what they want to say, in which way they want to say, because getting heated conversation does no good to anybody. But response with, some kind of a thinking time helps to make it more neutral and probably get some positivity points in this kind of a drama called game, or a game called drama, whatever you want to put it. Now, obviously, since you are kind of responding to these opening moves, you have to be very careful how you thread. If you go too much on offensive, you are kind of a proven guilty of this shitty or toxic behavior, which was the thing to, ignite the whole story here. Now, if you just take it too neutral, it almost seems like you're kind of apologetic and you're not really saying anything. You're just kind of nodding and there's nothing to add and blah, blah, blah. So you have to move a little bit lightly, but you have to move nonetheless. You have to give some kind of a response to show that you have some kind of a backbone, that you're not just swallowing all the shit that the other party is giving you. No matter how right they might be, but still. So this is a more like a psychological warfare in the sense of this first party doing that and the second party doing that. And of course there will be response to a response to a response. You get the idea how it goes. But point is, where these first initial accusations were kind of a short and straight to the point and explaining very quickly what was going on, though adding some contract forms there and showing how shitty the contracts were supposed to be for these kind of live musicians and whatnot. Danny Field from Cradle of Filth made quite of a lengthy statement to reply on this. Now obviously I'm not going to read it out loud to you, or this would be very, very long video. Instead I'm putting this link to the video so you can read it, unless of course it's gonna get removed over time. I do not know, and I don't really, frankly to be said, care. This doesn't matter when we go like months away from this case. This is probably soon forgotten. But there is obviously moral to the story, which I will get after the original point. Now, as said, with the Cradle of Filth response to this whole idea is very, very much more neutral, but it's, getting back to the statements which are here listed from 1 to 6 or 7 or something like that. 1 to 5, I guess, and then lengthier versions underneath. And they are explaining some of the points which were a little bit either clearly lied from the very beginning, or there were just some misunderstandings. Like said, nobody knows exact truth. I don't think Zoe or Ashrock are putting their full truth out there, nor is Danny Filth or Cradle of Filth doing that. So we always have to have a little bit of, how to say, take it with a grain of salt, if you know what I mean. My point here is probably both sides are rightfully so protecting their own agenda, their own point of view, how things are being run and how things are being operated and all that stuff. And the point here is, obviously, there is a slight and very good chance even that both sides have been more or less a little bit annoying or full of assholes at some point towards one another. I mean, there's always a reason why things have sparked so badly, so that these guys are now going to a court of law and ready to tackle these problems and all that stuff. I mean, when you bring attorneys to a whole band case, it's just not some small fight or some kind of a disagreement. But there is also a third side of the story, and now that was surfacing just hours before I decided to make this video, when I was just merely waiting for Danny Filth's or Cradle of Filth sides of things, which seems to be there like 2 days ago. And this was coming from another ex-member of the band, left the band years ago, and now kind of taking side of these newly departed members of the band, like showing like, so glad that you openly spoke about the problems within the band and challenged their stuff, and it was so traumatic and all that stuff. No, I don't want to belittle that stuff. There are probably really, really good reasons why these kind of statements are being made. But as I was getting to the original point by Zoe and Ashrock, something didn't seem to add up fully. I mean, there was like this feeling already between the lines. You could read, this is not the whole truth. There is more than that. And it seems like there are lots of points which were not revealed by these two couple, which Danny Filth is now bringing to attention. And it seems by people who have been there to, witness this whole events. Obviously, Danny is not bringing all the bad parts right there in the eyes of the public, because I mean it would just harm him, his life and his band and all that stuff for the rest of the whole story. So there are probably lots of blind spots which we are still unable to see and understand how things are. Now, to the moral of the story point is, this is something that I have addressed in previous years. Don't bring your band drama online. Why so? First of all, everybody will see you're kind of a clown. Doesn't matter how good guitar player, keyboard player, good vocalist, or whatever your instrument is, you're gonna harm your future career. Why I say so? Because if I was now running a big band, something like Cradle of Filth, I was a label manager, whatever, I would be like double, triple checking the very facts what these two people, Zoe and Ashrock, have been doing previous years or outside Cradle of Filth. Why so? Because they really seem that they love the drama. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring this to attention, but take it to the court of law right from the beginning. And the attorney would be probably saying, don't take it to the social media. Let me handle it from this point, and that keeps your mouth shut. Otherwise, you're just going to harm the whole game here. So they are now harming their own reputation. And when people are being smart-assing, yeah, it's about principles and all that stuff, but if your principle is going to get you killed or harmed, I mean, seriously? You want to be a musician who wants to join other bands and, do that stuff? Probably do it the right way. The right way is not getting your social justice points and, make you survive the battle. It's about maintaining your career, integrity, and all that stuff. Being smart, to put it short. And also when it comes to Cradle of Filth, with the track record of having multiple ex-members in the band, and now these two joining those ranks, I mean, it's kind of a showing there must be some problem with this kind of a band, Obviously, it's Danny Filth's band, so everybody else is more like a mercenary. And there are lots of bands, including bands like Gorgoroth. I mean, you kind of join the band to do live or play an album, but you're still more or less hired gun. That's just how it is with a lot of bands with very, very few original members. And so, in this sense, I don't think Cradle of Filth is, an exception. But the good thing that is going to come out of this, and this might be a bad too, we won't know yet, is that now these kind of agreements are put on the public, and everybody can see what kind of a payment there is supposed to be, what kind of a terms there are supposed to be when you are joining a band for, say, session member or live member only, whatever the status will be. And that will, I think, create some kind of a good visibility to the very topic here we discussed. I mean, for a lot of people in the underground, music scene, not just black metal, but beyond, they don't give a shit. They don't care because most bands out there are not run as business. And it's, in my opinion, shouldn't be either. But then again, we have to understand when your band, grows in size and starts touring and, getting more pro in a way, you kind of need to do as a business. So it's not like Cradle of Filth's kind of a band could operate the same way as some 3-year-old band, barely 2 demos out and all that stuff. It's a very, very different game, and people who are trying to see the whole black metal scene or whatever metal scene as one and the same thing, I mean, they are gravely missing the fucking point. There are these business level bands, and then there are these more like hobbyists or whatever lifestyle you want to call it, but in terms of legal things and financial things and so on, very, very different game. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the whole drama now unfolds. Will there be even more response from ex-members? Will some ex-members actually join Danny Field and say, hey, don't attack the band, they're great guys, or the management is great? Or will they be all attacking Danny Field and Cradle of Filth crew, joining forces with Joey Ashrock and whoever? It will be interesting to see where there will be some kind of a backlash even further, or will the whole story die within a week or so? Now we're only here few days in, so it's very, very fresh now, but who knows if it will last the next week, next month, and so on. More like lesson learned. Once again, don't put your band drama online unless you want to feed the popcorn culture big time, because the stores are more than happy to sell you those potato chips and popcorns and beer while you are suffering in your own soap opera drama. And that's pretty much of the story. Now, off you go. What are your thoughts about the stuff? Was the culprit in question Danny Field and Cradle of Filth, or was it these 2 ex-members? Or are they all to be blamed for what had really happened? What's your story? What's your take? Let me know in the comment section below, and if there's enough story to talk about it, let's do part 2. If not, let it die. Off you go. Bye.